All right, good morning, everyone. I will be now starting the recommending committee meeting scheduled for today, April 30th at 10 a.m. Calling the meeting to order. We are in compliance with the open meeting law, correct? Thank you, we are. So what I'm going to do is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 6 bills that are being introduced today. Item number 5 is we're gonna need a little bit more time on item number 5. The other 5 are pretty standard housekeeping, so I'm gonna hold item number 5 till the end. So let's go with number 3, bill number 2018-7 for possible action, levies assessments for special improvement districts, number 1485, Alta Drive landscaping maintenance, proposed by Mike Jansen, Director of Public Works. Hi.
Good morning. For the record, Alan Pavelka, City Engineer for the City of Las Vegas. This bill is to levy assessments for Special Improvement District 1485, Alta Drive landscape maintenance. This has been read into the first and second reading at prior City Council meetings. Today it's recommending and it will go to Council for final approval on May 16th. Any questions?
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone want to speak on this bill, agenda item number 3? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, go ahead.
Motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Oh, do we have to use the...
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, then there you go. I forgot. All right. And then post. All right, motion carries. Bill 2018-7 will be held at the May 16th, 2018 City Council meeting. We'll now go on to item number 4. Bill number 2018-8 for possible action, levies assessments for Special Improvement District number 1516, Fremont Street Maintenance District, FY 2019, Las Vegas Boulevard to 8th Street, proposed by Mike Jansen, Director of Public Works.
Good morning. Again, for the record, Alan Pavelka, City Engineer for the City of Las Vegas. The assessments for this district will be suspended from July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year due to surplus of funds acquired through previous assessments. Again, this bill was read at the first and second readings at prior council meetings. Today's recommending, and then it will be heard for adoption May 16th.
All right, thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on 2018-8? Seeing no one, any questions?
Move for approval.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Councilman Coffin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Thank
we're
you.
remote. I keep thinking we're in the clerk's office.
Well,
All right, go ahead and vote. And post. Motion carries unanimously. 2018-8 will be held at the May 16th City Council meeting. Okay, agenda item number 5, bill number 2018-9 for possible action amends LVMC Chapter 6.95 pertain. I'm sorry, we're going to hold off on that. So let's go to item number 6. Bill number 2018-10 for possible action amends the licensing and zoning provisions regarding nightclubs to update the definition of nightclub and revise applicable licensing and zoning standards and adjust the live entertainment and food sales provision pertaining to restaurants with alcohol, sponsored by Councilman Soroka. Who's going to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Mary McElhone, Deputy Planning Director. This bill basically amends the licensing and zoning provisions regarding nightclubs to update the definition of nightclub and revise applicable licensing and zoning standards and adjust live entertainment and food sales provisions pertaining to restaurants with alcohol. The major provision of this bill is that it removes a 50-square-foot entertainment area threshold that ended up capturing some establishments as nightclubs when they should not have been considered nightclubs. So that 50-square-foot entertainment area has now been removed from the definition. Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone wish to speak on agenda item number 6? Close the public hearing.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Fiore. Go ahead and vote. And post. Motion carries unanimously. This bill will be heard at the May 16th, 2018 City Council meeting. Item number 7, Bill 2018-11 for possible action amends Appendix F to the Unified Development Code, Title 19, to establish a list of permissible uses for PD zone properties within Area 1 of the downtown Las Vegas Overlay District, proposed by Robert Summerfield, Director of Planning. Hi.
Mr. Chairman, Robert Summerfield, Director of Planning. So when we adopted the interim standards for the downtown plan and dissolved the old Centennial Plan, we missed that there are specific permitted uses within the PD area of what used to be the Parkway District. And so this would just reintroduce those uses so that that area of the downtown has a comprehensive list of permitted uses for any future development that may occur in that area.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on item number 7? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close public hearing. Is there a motion to approve? Oh, I have a question from Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This reminds me an awful lot about the Arts District and how they enumerated the uses. And then every time some good thing came in and people recognized it, we had to make a change, text amendment, taking months to make a change. What do you think about that, Robert? Isn't it possible that we're going to find some other use here, that some other use will show up? I don't care how long this list is.
Mr. Chairman, through you, yes, Councilman, so that is a excuse me, that is a point of concern with the permitted uses in the specific by district. The difference here, or the problem, is that because this area of downtown is actually PD, which is planned development zoning, it requires a separate use list. And so until we get the entire downtown under the form-based code, should the council decide to adopt form-based code for downtown, we have to have an established use list for this particular area because of the nature of its underlying zoning. So while I completely agree with you that was a concern in the Arts District, especially because the Arts District was regular zoning, but then it had its own use list that was separate from the standard zoning uses. In this case, because the PD zoning requires us to establish a permitted use table for it, we have to reestablish it because it doesn't default back to Title 19 as it does in, say, the Arts District or even the Fremont East or one of the other districts in downtown.
Could I ask one more question here? What was specifically left out?
So what was, again, Mr. Chairman, through you, in the PD zoning district, it doesn't have established permitted uses, so if you don't establish as a part of that zoning the uses, it essentially has no permitted uses. So it's not that anything was left out, it was by not including a list, we actually created a gray space where nothing new could be permitted until we established a use list for it. So it was an oversight when we dissolved the Centennial Plan. It's always had a list of permitted uses since it was the old Union Park District, which is now Symphony Park, which, again, because of its PD nature, requires us to establish a use list. That will go away when we do the form-based code, again, prefaced on council adopting a form-based code for the downtown, because that will take care of all of these zoning irregularities between the different districts.
I don't see any mention, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, through you to Robert, I don't see any mention, for instance, of medical marijuana being granted.
Correct.
Am I wrong? Have I missed that?
No, sir. Again, through you, Mr. Chairman, no, medical marijuana is not a part of this is establishing the list of uses as they existed in the Centennial Plan for the PD district. So this is over at World Market and Symphony Park, which does not contemplate medical marijuana at all.
Okay, well, my only gripe, I'll go ahead and support it. My only gripe is we get into these deals because nobody contemplated, and then the reasonable comes up. Guarantee you. Okay.
And so this is meant to be a cleanup. That would be more substantive of a change, and so that would be something we would need to talk to those property owners and that area of the community if they wanted to include those additional uses in their use table. This is really meant to be just a cleanup. We made no changes from what had previously been approved in that district.
So if anybody has a license or is doing business in a non-mentioned category here, they will be allowed to continue to operate?
Correct. If you're already in operation in that area, then if for whatever reason you're in a non-conforming status, meaning you're operating a use that is not otherwise permitted, but you were legal when you started, then you're legal until you quit.
Is there any kind of impediment put on that business for transfer of a license or of changes of its size or anything like that? If they're non-conforming, are we then sending them into another category like limbo, purgatory, where we really don't want to put them?
Mr. Chairman, through you, so there are provisions on if they decide to change the size of their footprint if they're a non-conforming use, then there are some rules for how they go about doing that. However, again, this is a cleanup item. It's not, it's the same use list that's been in place there for the last approximately 15 years. So it is not, it should not affect anybody, create a nonconformity that would result in a need to go through the nonconforming provisions of our code to do any expansions or changes in their operational needs.
Thank you. So, but like anything, if a council member, if it's in the council member's ward and we so want to give a variance or change what staff recommends, we can so do so, correct?
Correct. If you want to amend the permitted use list or authorize a special use permit or something to waive a condition that may apply, that is completely the discretion of the city council.
Excuse me, if I could just, I'll give it back to you in a second, through you, Mr. Chairman, but however, don't we have to have a text amendment and a lengthy process that accompanies a text amendment?
So correct. If there is a use that's not currently contemplated that the council would like to see in that PD district, yes, that would require a future text amendment and
Okay,
a
so
code
see,
change,
that, just for your edification, that can take 3 or 4
if it's not on the list.
No, this is vote.
No, you know,
Okay, we're good?
I'm okay to go ahead and vote for it, I
All
think.
right, do you have a motion?
I'll move for approval against my better judgment.
Okay, I have a motion to approve agenda item number 7. Please vote.
We'll kind of have it both ways.
Motion carries unanimously. This bill will be heard at the May 2nd City Council meeting. And now we're on to agenda item 8, bill number 2018-12 for possible action authorizes the issuance by the city of its general obligation limited tax medium-term various proposed bonds series 2018A and its general obligation medium-term various proposed bonds Fremont Street Experience series 2018B in a combined aggregate principal amount not to exceed $43,880,000 proposed by our Director of Finance, Vanetta Appleyard.
Good morning, Vanetta Appleyard, Director of Finance. The bonds before you are medium-term bonds. They'll be amortized over 10 years. $12 million will be used for a fire station, $10 million will be used for the courtyard project, and the $21.6 million will be used for the revitalization of Fremont Street Experience. We received the Department of Taxation approval on April 18th for these bonds, and we plan to sell them on May 15th with the bond closing expected June 5th.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? I will close the public hearing. Any questions? All right, I have a motion to approve by Councilman Coffin. Go ahead and vote. And post. Motion carries unanimously, and this bill will be held at the May 2nd, 2018 City Council meeting. Okay, now for the grand finale. Agenda item number 5, Bill 2018-9 for possible action, amends the LVMC Chapter 6.95 pertaining to medical marijuana to conform to recently adopted provisions of state law, to add to that chapter provisions regarding licensing and regulation retail marijuana operations consistent with state law, sponsored by Councilman Coffin. So let me just kind of set this up for discussion here. So initially, and this is after talking to staff and our attorneys, the initial bill that was introduced by Councilman Coffin was basically cleanup stuff. It had to do with conforming to some state law decisions. There was nothing controversial in there. And that's what was published. Councilman Coffin then added the First Amendment, which caused this thing to become controversial and talks about medical marijuana and retail marijuana and whether you need a license for one or the other. So that's why a lot of you are here today. My recommendation is going to be, and then I'll hear from the people up here as well as anybody from the public that wants to comment on it. My recommendation is that we tee up for discussion and a vote the original ordinance that dealt strictly with cleanup stuff, and the section in there that deals with whether you need a medical marijuana license to open up a retail license is going to be introduced at a later date by Councilman Coffin as a standalone ordinance to be discussed again down the road sometime, taking into consideration some things that the state will be doing right around June or July. So that's what I'm going to throw out there today, and I guess I'll start with Councilman Coffin and Councilwoman Fiore to make some comments on that, and then we will have a public hearing on anyone who would like to speak. So who would like to go first?
If I could, I want to say that this became really complex over the weekend with the provisions being, with me, more clearly understanding the provisions of the state and their unwillingness to try to issue any new medical licenses. But I don't think I know it completely now. I think that we should hear testimony today and then decide, I think I like your idea, by the way. But I want us to hear some testimony and, of course, explanations from our staff here. We've got 3 people that I think can reduce this to understandable language for the public.
Okay.
And then hopefully we would have a committee request to, fill in what we don't push if we push out the first bill. That's what I'm
now. You could wait. Okay. All right. So if I could go to staff, and if you could just tell us what the original ordinance, the cleanup stuff, what that is all about, so everybody understands what that particular original bill was discussing.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Darcy Adelby-Hurd, Business License Section Manager. The overall highlights of the original introduced bill amends 6.95, adding provisions to allow the city to regulate retail marijuana following state laws and in the same manner as we regulate medical marijuana. There was recent state legislation prohibiting local governments from regulating on specific topics such as labeling, packaging, advertising, testing, and transportation. So this bill goes through and cleans up that language to be in line with that. Then there's also a few little minor cleanup language that happens throughout this chapter. In the beginning, we do add some definitions to account for the retail aspects of marijuana establishments. We removed the hour of operation restrictions. Before it was restricted to 3 a.m. and they could come to City Council to request a 24-hour operation, which I think most of them have already. So we've just taken that out completely where there's no hour of operation restrictions. We've simplified the requirements for the compliance permit process. It keeps the process of the compliance permit itself, but it removes some of the more stringent requirements. It allows for the special use permit to be heard independent from the compliance permit. Previously, they had to be heard simultaneously. Amends when a compliance permit is considered surrendered. Instead of after 12 months from the issuance of a state certificate, it's now 12 months from the issuance of the compliance permit itself. It removes the licensing expiring 2 years from the date of issuance and the requirement of applying for a biannual review, and just falls in line with what we do with our regular licenses, liquor licenses, and other privilege licenses. It adds provisions to not require a support business to hold both a medical and a retail. One combination license would be okay if they're doing both aspects. It adds the presence of minors on the premise of a marijuana establishment, a retail marijuana establishment, to be prohibited under all circumstances. Makes clear of the closure requirements that the licensee must notify the director. Previously, we did have one closure of a cultivation facility, and we've learned that our code was not clear enough to have them notify when they were closing what they were doing with the marijuana. It removes the on-site security requirement from a cultivation facility. It currently has in there, you have to have on-site security from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It removes that. Most of the problems that we have had have been at the dispensary sites, not at cultivation or production. Allows the department to approve ancillary sales of retail merchandise without having to go to city council. It adds the work card requirements for the medical marijuana establishment agent and the marijuana distributor agent. It just adds them into that requirement that already exists. And then the fees. So state regulations changed where we can't charge more than 3%. So any marijuana establishment in the city of Las Vegas would have a 3% charge of gross revenue on a semi-annual basis. There is the one-time origination fee, which mimics what our previous annual fees were. So cultivators were paying $20,000 annually for the first 5,000 square feet of space, and then $10,000 for each additional 5,000 square feet of space. That now has become just a one-time origination fee. Production pays $5,000 annually, is now just a one-time origination fee. Testing lab, $10,000. The dispensary or retail store is $75,000. The marijuana distributor, $10,000. Those become the one-time fees. Any establishments that are based outside of our jurisdiction, the fees remain the same, except we've added a caveat. So it was 1% of gross revenue or $5,000, whichever is greater if you were a cultivation, but we put a caveat not to exceed 3% of gross revenue so that we're not in violation of state law. Production, 1% of gross revenue or $1,500, whichever is greater, again, not to exceed the 3%. And laboratories are 1% of gross revenue. And then we do have the incorporation of our dual license ordinance that was approved last spring, incorporated into this amendment, or into this introduced bill. And that's it.
Okay.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if the committee would like, I could go through some additional items that were cleanup items that were put forth in the proposed First Amendment, things that we discovered needed a cleanup after the bill was introduced. If you'd like, I can do that now so that you know what additional cleanup is needed.
Okay, go ahead.
I can either do that on a line-by-page basis if you're interested, or I can just describe it generally depending on the committee's desire.
I think if you could just describe it generally, I think we'll be okay.
All right. The first proposed cleanup would be to eliminate, it's on page 6. There was a definition of public place that was put in there because that term appears in state law, but we don't use the term in the bill at all in the sense that it was put in state law, so we would eliminate that definition from the list of definitions. The second one appeared on page 10. We added if required. The bill as introduced would have required all marijuana establishments of all kinds to get a compliance permit, and this flexibility allows the director to decide on a case-by-case basis whether or not to require a compliance permit for marijuana establishments, also known as retail marijuana. On page 16, if there's some language to allow the flexibility in case the state ever limits the number of marijuana or retail establishments that could be had in the city. That acknowledges that. It doesn't set a guideline. It just says we would have to take it into account in issuing licenses. Also on page 16, additional cleanup to take into account the possibility that the director may not have required a compliance permit for a retail establishment. Then there's the provision also on page 17, that's the one in controversy, That's the one that would have required a retail only to be operated in conjunction with medical marijuana. That may or may not come out, obviously, based on your conversation. Page 22, there was a limitation on what medical marijuana establishments could do. It said they may not allow the use, smoking, ingestion, or consumption of marijuana on the premises. This would add in retail marijuana or marijuana establishments to that prohibition. All the way to page 34, we had originally had separate transportation requirements for retail marijuana, and now the adjustment is just to allow whatever the state allows under their regulations, which is probably more flexible and liberal. Page 43, we had to address the fact that dual-use marijuana ordinance that you adopted has expired. And so there's a bunch of cleanup necessary on the ending pages of the bill to, in effect, keep in place those things that would have expired under the ordinance that expired, to recognize them, to ratify them. Therefore, if staff has issued licenses that would have expired by their terms in April this month, they continue to exist in accordance with this ordinance as if it had been in place. And there's some additional cleanup like that on page 49 as well. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And those are all in the First Amendment?
Those are all in the proposed First Amendment.
Okay, so what I'm going to recommend, and it sounds like Councilman Coffin is sort of agreeing with it, is that we hear and vote on the original ordinance and the First Amendment concerning all the cleanup items. So if you would, anybody from the public that wants to come up and speak to those is welcome to come up. The second part is what I'm going to recommend is that the section in the First Amendment that deals with the retail and medical marijuana, whether they should be connected or not, be deleted, and Councilman Coffin can bring that back when he wants to as a standalone ordinance in order for us to discuss that particular item, which is a little bit more complicated, which is a little bit more controversial, and we probably need some more time to discuss that. If you want to come up and make public comment on that, you're also welcome to make public comment on that. So,
Mr. Chair, can I ask for clarification? Can we have people testify on, obviously you want them to testify on the bill.
I said they could
as
testify on
unamended,
either one.
But they could also,
Yes,
because I think it's important for us to hear what it is that they want
Yeah, that's
or
what
what they don't want.
That's what I said.
I'm sorry I jumped you.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone from the public wishing to make comment, come right up here and grab one of these microphones and go ahead and make your comment.
Can I say something?
Sure.
While they're on the way up here organizing themselves, and I don't know how much time you're going to give them, Mr. Chair, but I just want to say that I introduced this bill with the amendment to protect medical marijuana. I make it a very important part of my life to push for medical marijuana, and I'm worried about what's happening now with the wholesale run green rush retail folks coming in, because I see a bunch of people have dropped off medical lists at the state, 6,000 people, then we're down to 21,000. If that's the case, maybe it's because, like me, I resented having to pay a $50 fee for 2 years. That's $100 for 2 years. And I thought, well, there are some things that need to be cleared up for medical. I don't want to see more things driving people away from medical, because that's really what we voted for in the beginning. We were on the edge, and some of us were really opposed. Medical was sold, it was good, and it works. So therefore, that's why I introduced or requested that. But I'm going to bring it back, the other part. Thank you.
Okay, we'll hear public comment. I'm not going to put a time limit on it, but just kind of be very succinct and clear, and we'll move this along. Thank you. And please identify yourself.
All right, good morning. For the record, my name is Mona Lisa Samuelson, and I am Nevada's very first medical marijuana patient advocate and community activist. And anytime we have discussion about a medical marijuana program and what patients want, I have to put my 2 cents in there and make sure that you get the list of patient needs, because there is a whole list of patient needs that we have not discussed as of yet, and everybody needs to be aware of that. Now, as it stands for this bill in particular, I understand that this is trying to give some teeth to our regulatory process in a local government fashion. And I'm all for that. We've seen how businesses being allowed to regulate themselves and being encouraged to police themselves. We, as patients, have serious concern with that.
Up here, we're just curious, remember, there's two bills here now, in
Right.
essence. So say, if you want to leave that language in, you say why and yes
Okay.
or no.
I'm getting to
You don't like
that.
the language and you want the original bill.
Okay. It's a very complicated matter for patients because as we speak about holding our community that exists already, as we speak about holding them responsible, we're also speaking to making them a monopoly. So it's very hard for us as patients to get behind whether we should allow these people to continue on the journey and flesh this thing out to where it works out good for the medical patients as they said that it would, or if we really need some new blood in here to keep things honest. So when you're talking about should I speak on one or the other, you really need to know the full scope. So I bring these issues down so that you know them. And I hope these people all speak and give you their opinions, because I would hope by now that you would understand the patient opinion is we are not happy with the current situation. We need a regulatory board, and we need people to understand that it's a matter of public safety. Thank you very much.
Okay. Did you want to, Luann, did you want to submit that to the clerk's, is that right? Okay. All right. Thank you. Next.
For the record, I am Cindy Brown, and first, most of your cleanup language sounds pretty good. My bigger issue is Bob's amendment to only require the current or up-and-coming recreational people to have a medical license. The medical licenses were limited by law. That can't be changed until the next session unless they decided to have a special session. We need the recreational because there are a number of people that are using cannabis medically because they didn't want to be on the registry. As to Bob's comment about people dropping off of the registry, one of the biggest reasons people have dropped off is now they feel that they can't grow their own. The state's trying to take away our right to grow. They took once we had 7 plants per patient, no matter how many patients were in a house. Then it went to 12 plants per patient. The last legislative session, they screwed us and said, now, me and my husband have to share our 12 plants. What other medication do you share your medication with your family members? You don't. So a lot of people said, it's just not worth it. I can't grow enough now because they've limited me. So we have an issue with that, but the recreational, the new ones should not be required to have a medical license. We do have a few good medical ones here. Essence has a good program, Oasis has a pretty good program, and so does Sahara Wellness. Other dispensaries I haven't really been to because they're not really in my area. But one other thing I noticed on one of the first pages, you guys talk in your stuff about marijuana being dangerous to children and elderly people. It is not dangerous. You might feel like you're going to die if you eat some and eat too much, but you're not going to die. It has never killed a single person just from ingestion. Then there is also a new product called Undo that will reverse that effect. So you'll get rid of all the high, but you'll still keep all of the medicinal effects. And we're working on bringing that here to Nevada also. But I had a couple other points, but they just went out of my head, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
If I could just say one thing, Mr. Chair.
Let's go through public
I'm not
comment.
going to dispute them. No, I just wanted to say, I haven't heard any of these things. Nobody's written a letter to me on this stuff.
Okay.
So some of it's brand new to me, which I don't like because these are regular fans of this bill and the testimony, and they should know how to reach me and you.
All right. Hi.
Ready? Okay. James Lamb, I'm the Vice President of the Las Vegas Medical Marijuana Association. I wanted to mention, about 10 days ago, I set up a meeting with Bill Anderson, who is the director of the Department of Taxation, on behalf of Peter Guzman and Ken Evans, who were with the Urban and Latin Chamber of Commerce, where they expressed in this meeting their deep concerns about the lack of diversity in the industry, especially as far as dispensary licenses. And this is something that when you start looking at those people who have licenses, and in essence, if you do require a medical license before a person can get any other recreational license here in the city, you are in effect closing off, or could be closing off, any new people from obtaining dispensary licenses. So that this is a major concern. The other thing is that we have been approached by numerous cultivation companies, cultivation and production companies, that would like to get a dispensary license for various reasons. And these cultivations are much more diverse. They also have doctors, patients in as part of and ownership positions in these companies. So this would add diversity to it. The other thing is there's a lot of people who are looking to get into the market as far as ownership, and to restrict that to only those people who currently have a medical license would totally restrict those people or new entries to the industry. Cindy, of course, has already mentioned the thing that a lot of people are not getting medical license. A lot of reasons. They do not want to jeopardize any federal programs that they're involved in. People who have VA concerns don't want to be on a list. In fact, the Ninth Circuit Court has already said that the mere fact that you happen to have a medical card is an automatic thing of guilt, that where you don't have to prove it. It's just the fact that you have a card, you're automatically assumed guilty. So there's a lot of people who are not getting cards that are being served by recreational businesses. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Vicki Higgins. I've been an advocate since 2009. Mr. Coffin, I'm sorry, I did submit a letter overviewing some of the things we're discussing today back at the last council session, and the item was skipped. So I did have a copy of my letter I did submit here today. There are a few points I believe I have to agree with my previous associates. We definitely need to have a fair and open market when it comes to new retail. Yes, the cultivation and the productions should be priority, first and foremost, in addition to our new people. We really fought hard to avoid the monopoly situation, and we really do need to diversify this and bring more people into this with the different ideas and different attitudes. We've got some really great people in place. We do want to avoid those monopolies. Even though they're awesome, we need to open it up. Our other thing, we discussed safety within this, what little I was able to look over. We need to really, we're begging you as our council members to help us to figure out a way to bank, to handle the cash, to make our businesses that much safer. We want to keep our employees safe. We want to keep the robberies. We want to keep in tandem with our police departments and the other departments involved with what we're doing. In addition to education, we talked about public service announcements in different districts and different counties. We got our police department is right on top of things so far as learning. I think we have many other departments in our community that really do need to learn more. Our parenting is at risk. Our jobs are at risk. DUI issues, impairment issues. We can't carry a weapon. I sleep with an ice pick and a knife next to my bed. Should somebody come into my home, that's my only option. I'm not allowed a weapon, and this is one of the reasons Cindy's talking about. Many people will not get a medical card, and they're letting them lapse because we are on a state federal registry, and they feel highly restricted. There are many other issues that we need to address. I'm trying to keep this kind of focused today. The donations and the commitment to our community is really important of these existing MMEs that we have in place, and I applaud the council for following through and making sure that these people do follow through with their promises. We have some really great people in our community. Let's keep the communication going. I really appreciate your time and your efforts in focusing on these issues. You've got my communication information. If you ever wish to speak with me, feel free. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, my name is Chris Rich. I am a store manager of a current retail location, and I am here to come maybe with the unpopular opinion. However, I would like to say that, you know, as a retail establishment that currently operates with dual licensing, we are in opposition to new licenses being given out to lots of retail establishments. Currently, we feel that would possibly drive revenue away from current dual licensed retail establishments and therefore hinder the ability for medical patients to have access to quality medicine at current dispensaries. With all of these new retail locations opening up, obviously revenue will be divided among them as business goes elsewhere into these new establishments, and could potentially cause medical patients not to have access to, you know, all of the medication that we would previously be able to afford to provide. So that is definitely a concern of ours on that side. Not much more to speak on that, but definitely want to continue to allow medical patients to get access to the medication that, you know, the state has been so great about allowing. So, and we think that the current system works very well amongst, you know, some regulatory changes that have gone into effect, you know, pretty frequently over the last few months. I feel like we're doing a good job here in Nevada, and we feel like it's working pretty well. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Yes, sir. State your name and whatever you want to say.
Good morning, Andrew Jolly. I'm the CEO of the Source Dispensaries. So question 2 does allocate a number of retail-only dispensary licenses at the state level. But question 2 also grants specific authority to municipalities to determine whether or not they want to allocate or implement those additional licenses. I do support the city's proposed language to require both medical and retail components for a dispensary. This entire program was built on the top of a medical program. I am concerned that I'm seeing the numbers drop of medical cards. I think we need to fix the medical card process to make it easier and more cost-effective for patients to get their cards and keep their cards. But I don't think opening up a bunch of retail-only stores is the right move at this time. The secret to our success, I believe, here in Nevada has been a very tightly controlled program. We're very well regulated, and I think we should all feel very proud of where we've come in the last 3 or 4 years. And so I think personally it's too early to add retail-only stores in our communities. I think we need to let the industry stabilize and still keep in mind the needs of the medical patients and be able to serve them by providing medical products at all dispensaries. And lastly, I do believe that the current demand is being served by the stores that are in existence, not just in the city, but valley-wide. You see the city of Henderson passed an ordinance to restrict retail-only stores. I think that was a good move, and I think we'll see other municipalities do that. And I applaud your leadership and being cognizant of this issue. No one is afraid of competition. I think that's healthy. But given the nature of our industry and the early status of the industry and the quick evolution of the industry, I'm in support of taking a very slow and cautious approach to make sure we do it right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jennifer Solis, for the record. I represent WeCan, Wellness Education, Cannabis Advocates of Nevada. I happen to agree with Ms. Higgins' opinion that you should look at the community benefits that these people have promised the community and make sure that any new licenses that are issued or any license transfers between ownership, that those original community benefits are upheld. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Nick Spiritos, the CEO of the Apothecary Shop. And I want to speak on 2 issues. The first is on section 6.95-230 on the cost of getting licenses if you're outside of the city. It says 1% of gross revenue if you're a production facility. So we have a facility in the city that wants to buy our product. We would need to pay 1% of our total gross revenue in order to sell into the city, if I got it right.
Do you want to answer that?
Yes, Darcy at I Heard Business Licensing. It would be 1% of what you sold into the city, not your total gross.
Okay, so that's not very clear, because 1% of our gross revenue would be well, it would be really great for the city, not too great for us.
But that's not the case. It would be
Okay.
1% of what's sold in.
Of what to the city, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, that answers that. I'd like to speak on the other topic of
Sure.
joint medical and recreational licenses. First, I'd like to point out, diversity was a consideration in the initial application period. That was an absolute one of the categories, so that was a consideration. Two, I did come prepared with the map I've marked up, but 95% of Valley residents are within 15 minutes of a dispensary as we currently sit. And this isn't a competitive issue. Our facility has another dispensary 300 feet away. So we've been in a competitive situation. Exhale is 300 feet from us, so we're not crying about competition. You're talking about need. But more importantly, last 2 points is if you have recreational or retail operations separate from medical, you will essentially destroy the medical marketplace totally. That would cause for us to have 2 separate SKUs, additional overhead compared to retail only. So eventually, if I've got to add 10% to my overhead to carry 2 SKUs and 90% of our business is, quote, recreational, then eventually business is going to force you to close your medical, which was the whole purpose of this. The whole idea was to have a medical program. That's why us 5 physicians got into this, is I'm going to present a study in Chicago at the American Society of Clinical Oncology of our results replacing opiates with cannabis. It was the medical thing that drove this, and to destroy that by allowing retail only on a business level is a huge mistake in my opinion. Lastly, it's going to put us under increased federal scrutiny. Although the Trump administration may go up, down, sideways, whichever way the wind blows that day, what he's been very clear about is even if they're not going to pursue the medical marijuana folks, they haven't made any comments of their position on the recreational only programs. And so I think that calls for very extreme caution in addition to the other points I made. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning. For the record, Marla McDade-Williams. I'm with Strategies 360 this morning on behalf of John Oseguera, who is unable to be here, but we are here on behalf of our clients, Thrive, Essence, Bloom, and New Leaf. Some of their principals including Philip Peckman, Mitch Britton, Brian Greenspun, Rory Reed, Derek Peterson, Kenny Kuykendall, and Pui Premsrat. And would just like to say that we are in support of the amended bill that was put forward by Councilman Coffin as it relates to linking medical marijuana dispensaries to retail stores. As you know, it's still a relatively new industry in the state, and even the Department of Taxation, having taken on this new responsibility just in July of last year, so not even a year yet, they are still getting up to speed and trying to manage enforcement and compliance with the programs. By creating the link between medical and retail, it assists local governments as well as the state by having fewer locations where you have to do enforcement at. And I think your staff, it helps your staff because, again, their resources are limited and they're able to have some economies of scale with their enforcement efforts. I'd also like to say that there is no requirement in state law to have standalone retail stores. And it started, this whole recreational industry started with a tie to medical marijuana. And keeping that tie, again, I think does help patients. And although the card numbers might be falling, I mean, I had my own experience this past week where a friend of my dad's is in need of medical marijuana and she's unable to travel and she's 250 miles from a store. He happened to be in town. I was able to actually go into the store. I'm not a registered caregiver and I'm not a patient, but I can go in and still get the product she needs, just not in the quantities that it would be available to a medical patient. But because that local store carries both of those inventories, there's a lot to be said for maintaining that tie-in. And as Dr. Spiritos mentioned, I think by not expanding too quickly, by continuing to manage our resources, we do maintain that adherence to the Cole Memo and the federal government's concern with states that are moving very quickly into the recreational arena. We're able to, again, manage things. We're a very well-regulated state, and by keeping that tie-in, we're able to continue to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning, AJ Delap on behalf of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Chuck Calloway is our resident law enforcement marijuana. I like to call him the czar of marijuana for law enforcement. He asked me to come in and say a few words today. He's currently caught up in another committee. The position of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is one of abundance of caution. We believe that we're working very well with the industry. We've worked very well on the legislation as well. We're open to the new ideas and concepts as this moves forward into our community. However, we're still trying to wrap our arms around data sources, the impacts to the community. And with that in mind, we certainly appreciate moving slowly into these new areas. We're asking to give us the opportunity as your law enforcement provider for the community, a chance to see how this is all impacting for the long term, and then moving from there. I'd also like to put forth the fact that agencies throughout the country involving law enforcement are reaching out to us. We field daily phone calls from various communities that are looking at going this same path. And so Las Vegas is definitely on the radar for direction. And with that in mind, not only is it impactful to our community, but I think an argument can be made very easily that it's impactful to the country. So we just ask that to continue on this path of abundance of caution, and we, as always, are open to any questions or any levels of support we can provide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, David Brown, 9910 West Cheyenne, here on behalf of Thrive Cannabis Dispensary and myself, and more of the little guys that invested into this industry and pushed all our chips in, if you will, on a medical industry a little over 2 years ago. We rode out that medical industry knowing there was risk there, and we took that risk banking on a recreational industry that would complement the medical industry. And when you bring the second part of the bill forward, obviously I'm in support of recreational only with medical at this time. If the demand was too high and our stores saw lines going out the door, and we had long waits for product and we couldn't get a product to either our medical customers or our rec customers, I could see you pushing forth with more recreational dispensaries, but that's just not the case. Right now, we meet our demand, and at one of our stores in the city of Las Vegas, we have one in North Las Vegas, one in the city of Las Vegas. Quite honestly, we can only make the city of Las Vegas store work because we have the North Las Vegas store supporting it. If you split our demand, which is in essence what more stores would do, we would have a hard time making ends meet at that city of Las Vegas location. Secondly, some of the other negatives to opening more stores. We work closely with Metro and also the FBI. We've taken both of them through our stores and given them training on what the grow looks like, what the dispensary looks like. We consider ourselves a good community partner. We respect what Metro and also what the FBI say about, hey, let's figure this out. Let us get our arms around it before you expand this industry. So they are very much in support. We are very much in support of getting our arms around this industry before you open up more stores. Also, on our existing stores, like I said before, splitting the demand would just be absolutely devastating to our city of Las Vegas. You're not going to create more tax revenue to the city by splitting that demand. Obviously, if you're splitting up, sending more customers to a different store, you're still getting the same amount of sales, and thus no increased revenue to the city other than just the fee for the application process. And like I said before, I am the little guy. We pushed all our chips in. Mitch Britton, who's a partner of mine in Thrive Cannabis Marketplace, started as a bud tender in Colorado. He worked his way up the ladder, moved to Las Vegas banking on this medical industry, and he spent a lot of sweat equity and all his savings to get into this, just as I have put in a bunch of sweat equity and pushed all my savings in. By opening more stores, we risk hurting the little guy that took all the risk and pushed all their chips in on a medical industry that could very well now be just devastated by more stores. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, good morning. My name is Madison Salabini. I am a volunteer with Las Vegas NORML, which is a subchapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law. And I just kind of want to advocate from a different standpoint. Obviously, being a medical patient is very important, and being able to cater to our medical patients is huge. And protecting our industry and business owners, I understand the importance of that. But something that I don't really hear us talking about much is the war on drugs and how it's still impacting communities of color. And one of the ways that I'm seeing that happening here is a lot of our community is unable to afford recreational marijuana, forcing them to still go to the black market. So even though, we look at it as, we have this recreational program and people aren't being, arrested and going to jail, they actually still are because they can't afford marijuana. So I do believe that with more licenses being issued, that this will drive the cost down. It may not generate any more revenue for the state based on, competition of resources there, but I do think that it will help consumers, and I think that it'll help our society, and I think it's an effort for achieving some social justice.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Good morning. For the record, John Lobb, City of Las Vegas, 89149. I'm president of the Las Vegas Medical Marijuana Association, so we apply the intent of the dual licensees. Our mission is to advance medical marijuana. Some of the issues we see, though, with the Section 2, the dual licenses, is that, I've been in the line on the medical side and look at the number of people on the adult use side, and I see a lot of seniors. I've talked to them. They have back problems. They can't sleep or whatever it might be, but they didn't want to get their card. I mean, that is, again, you've heard this over and over again. The card issue is a big issue. People don't want to get in, quote, the system, or maybe they might lose their gun rights or whatever it might be. They want to do this anonymously. Maybe it's where they work or whatever. A lot of senior citizens do use it. So the recreational ones do actually fit that bill. I was at a 420 at an quote recreational dispensary, which is NUWU, and I ran into patients there. People have been in accidents, so it's serving both issues. Really what the problem is, I've talked to the Urban Chamber, I've talked to the Latin Chamber, and I've talked to the Asian Chamber. They want to see more diverse ownership reflective of the community. And the state has made some, including that as one of the requirements, but they want to see that as more of an outcome. And there's some fear that this might prevent that from happening. And we had a commemoration on Martin Luther King, and they talked about some of the African Americans talked about the impact of the war on drugs had on the African American community, and it was pretty devastating for marijuana and other issues, but they feel very bitter and very strong about this issue, that they ought to be part of the industry they helped build. And so if there's some way we can, we can work out to make this more fair and more just. That's kind of what we're looking at here. So, take some consideration in thinking about this, and that's kind of our issue with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You already spoke.
I know, but
you already spoke. So
it's so important because
let's let everybody else have a chance to speak
let
first.
everyone. But can I please at the end, maybe?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi.
Valerie Godino, Harvest. Listen to these people. You've got so much compassion here. How can we help you make the correct decisions? We're out there every day fighting for our rights as patients, as owners, and here we are. So I'm just pleading to you, tell us how we can help you. Thank you.
Hold on, and keep...
Just not a question. It's all right, buddy. Give me a minute. It's been stated up here a few times that there's a shortage. Well, I tell you what. You're right, Mr. Chair. I'll wait. Go ahead. I decided I'll pass it to you.
Hi. Go ahead and state your name.
Hi, my name is Leanne Ivanovich. I'm a medical marijuana patient. I'm also an advocate. I'd like to discuss in regards to the medical cards. It's a very scary process for some people to go through and get these cards. We go down, we go through a bigger process, a more lengthy process here in Nevada than a lot of states go through. We go to a doctor, we have to have our names put onto a registry, which the registry was compromised once, which may scare people away again. And maybe why you're having either people fall off of the registry or refusing to go on the registry. And also regarding the registry, I don't understand why that there are such strong credentials for people to get a medical marijuana card. There is no strong credentials for somebody to get a prescription for opiate drugs. They do not have to go through and get a card and go ahead and take that card to a special place and pay hundreds of dollars to get that card. So I think that the entire medical marijuana card process needs to be looked at and revamped and maybe made a little bit more compassionate to the people there. And you look at the federal government in regards to Jeff Sessions and still threatening to come into people's homes, into dispensaries, into grow houses, and still shut them down. And there's still a fight going on there with that in regards to the medical marijuana card. And I also believe it's a HIPAA violation. There is no other place that I have to go to get a card to get my medicine. I can go to a doctor and get a prescription for an opiate and go directly to a pharmacy and get it filled. And I just think that like I said, the medical marijuana card needs to be looked at and revamped and looked at in regards to other prescription drugs and the way that they're governed and handled, and it should be similar in that process. In regards to the dual problem with the medical and recreational, I know that there were only originally certain amount of dispensaries and grows awarded in the state, and most of those grows and dispensaries are located centrally. They are not located on the outskirts of town, which does not make it compassionate for medical patients. They now have to drive unless they have a delivery service come to their home. Also in regards to the dual thing, I've listened to a lot of people talk in regards to rights to grow and also in regards to the businesses to exist. When we opened up Starbucks, there's one on every corner. When we open up 7-Elevens, there's one on every corner. Free market society. That isn't happening in regards to marijuana. People are having to go through very stringent processes in order to get licenses to do this. And also in regards to medical marijuana, I've gone to places where they're not compassionate to people and people have to wait in line. If you go into Walmart and you need a prescription drug, you go to a pharmacy, you go to the counter, you give them your prescription, you wait, you pick up your prescription, you pay there. You don't go into a regular line and pay at a retail point unless you choose to do so. You can pay for your prescription drugs at a special point in even a Walmart. So I'm just saying that these things need to be taken under consideration.
Thank you.
I'd like to make just one little quick point. The UN and the World Health Organization are both looking at changing the laws for cannabis across the world in regards to travel and in regards to merchandising. We're looking at the tobacco industry, and we're also looking at the large prescription industries getting involved in this. So all of our thoughts of gaining control could be going right out the window with the fact that we're dealing with a world traveling destination as far as tourism and airports. And if the laws change in regards to the UN and the World Health Organization, these are going to have immediate effect on not only our state, but also on the entire United States. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Councilman. Scott Rutledge, for the record. Just a few points. So I was the manager of the Yes on 2 campaign and worked with a lot of the folks that have come up here today that are on both sides of this issue. I think what's important to remember is the voters decided on this issue. And in the initiative, it called for the additional dispensary licenses by requiring something that really should be taken up at the state. This would be a de facto moratorium on those new licenses. So I think that's important to note. The voters asked for this, and to do this the way it's being suggested would be a de facto moratorium and against what the voters chose. Number two, medical issues. We all agree our program could be better, and there are things we need to do to improve that program, and those are also a lot of issues that, again, should be addressed at the state legislature. If we want to improve access to patients, if we want to lower cost of medical marijuana in the state, we need to be addressing those issues at the state legislature. Why do we require patients to pay any tax, sales tax or what have you, on medical marijuana? Why don't we address that at the legislature? The issue with the registry and the cards, why can't we address that at the legislature? In terms of the federal issue that was brought up, let's be clear. The federal government views marijuana as marijuana. They do not differentiate. And sure, we've done some clever things with budgetary issues, and there's the Cole memorandum was mentioned earlier. Well, that's been rescinded by the AG. So again, while I think it's important to note that, yeah, that we know there can be a difference between how we regulate medical and recreational, the federal government does not see a difference. So I don't think that argument really holds water. The other thing I would say is competition. By increasing the number of dispensaries, by increasing competition, we've had a number of folks come up here today and say they are not afraid of competition. I agree. Let's not be afraid of competition. Competition will lower prices to the end consumer. And at the end of the day, while these are businesses that create jobs, and I know that, John Restrepo, when he did the analysis for question 2, he said, this could be up to 6,000 jobs for the industry. If you do not allow these new businesses to open, we're not going to get to those numbers. So while it is also important to note that it's good for competition, it will increase more jobs, and it will bring more revenue to the city and the state. And on the final point, diversity. The industry looks the way it looks today because those individuals that were awarded the licenses back then, while there was some talk of diversity, there's a reason why the state legislature passed a bill last session to include diversity as a higher consideration, at least with the state, in terms of how they award these licenses. So there is a challenge with diversity in this industry, and I think by allowing these new businesses to at least apply and come before you, we give that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
For the record, I'm Timothy Eliotto, and well, I just wanted to, just to comment I stand as a medical cannabis patient, I stand neutral. I do understand the economic aspects as far as with the more dispensaries, there is more competition, and there's more outlets in which it does for distribution. So of course the prices are lowered, but one thing that it seems to not be extremely considered, because all cultivation facilities, each and every one does and will state that they grow the best genetics, they have the best medicine and all that. But as a patient, one thing I have not seen is the interest in research and development, because basically research and development is literally the backbone of this industry. If we are to basically provide a very good competitive, and I mean with other states as well, we do have to put these into consideration. The more interest and funding and resources and assistance, which is in that is provided for research and development, and the more we will basically see a very competitive advantage for this state and for this city as well. And also to comment on how Oakland is leading the way in providing no equity programs that provide no interest on loans and provide technical assistance for people of color, and because it's quite very expensive And as far as within the state level, I understand a lot of this work has to be done at the legislative level as well. But as a city, as we're moving on, I do just suggest that we put these in consideration, so we could open up the bowl just for everyone that participated, to be able to have the ability to sustain the industry, because the end goal is to be able to make this as longevity as possible. So, and these are all extremely important. So let's please support and put funding and resources for research and development as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. David Figler, 550 East Charleston Avenue. I represent a very successful dispensary in city limits, and one would think that we would be opposed to expansion within the city of competitors, but just the opposite. The state already limits the amount of dispensaries that are allowed to operate. The voters decided in question to allow expansion of that. It is not unbridled. It is still capped and limited. We come here in opposition to any effort by the city to further limit the expansion of the industry, because the expansion of the industry is important. The marketplace is a very unique but now developing arena. Every dispensary is different, and I encourage you, before you vote on any major changes, and I know Councilman Coffin has been very active in the dispensaries and knows the difference between them, and that they all provide a very different experience for people, and indeed different products, different genetics, different quality, different pricing. When the state opened up retail, it's not a distinct thing as much as it opened up medical forward products, CBD products that don't get people particularly altered or have the psychotropic impact, but certainly open that up to adult users who, for any number of reasons, didn't want to get a medical card. It is a popular product in our dispensary. Medical forward products we at our dispensary sell and won't stop if in fact at some point in the future we were be able to open up a second establishment, a retail only establishment would still have so many medical forward products. There's also no prohibition from allowing medical patients, people who have medical cards, to shop in a retail. I don't want that to be a misnomer, that retail is somehow only for people who want a certain type of product. All products are going to be available. There's no dual license, as I understand it, that radically changed the nature of the products that they were selling simply when they got a dual license. In other words, if I have a medical card, I can go into a retail-only establishment and get my medicine there. Now, I do not get my discount through the process of the point-of-sale medical program, but nothing precludes a smart operator from offering a lower price or a discount price for someone who has a medical card. Nothing prevents a retail-only establishment from offering a dedicated and unique line to medical card holders. There is nothing that prevents a smart retail operator from operating exactly like a medical program or doing workarounds to parallel it as best they can. Now, is it fully the same? No, but is it majority the same? Absolutely. I've talked to my owner who's here, Jim Blasco. He's a lifelong Nevadan, multi-generational. He and his wife got in this because they have two special needs kids who were dying from the products that were given to them by traditional medicine. And they have gone all in on this. And they care about medical patients and offer, in our opinion, one of the best medical programs. And they're not going to stop doing that if someday they wind up with a retail-only license as well. So I think the discussion needs to be mindful that there's not two distinct camps, that there's not this rec stuff and this medical stuff, but that everyone can benefit from the medicinal properties of certain strains of marijuana, and that it is, from a free market standpoint, probably good for some dispensaries to advance that and to advance that in programming, and that's certainly something that we would do. And so, you know, to suggest that every dispensary is the same, you know, everyone sells Bud Light or everyone sells Tylenol or everyone sells the same exact product is also not true. The patients know it. The patients go to the ones where they get the best products, where they get the products that serve their needs the most, and so we would be opposed, just on a principle standpoint, to put any further preclusion on an already limited number of expansions of industry entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Taylor from New Leaf Dispensary. Excuse me. And I wanted to say that there is actually a huge difference between medical products and recreational products. There's a huge range of edibles that only medical patients can get, and if you make a bunch of new recreational stores, they will not be able to get those there, and that's a huge deal. So I just wanted to bring up that clarification.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Till. I'm a historian and researcher and building an archive on the industry, and I fully support you moving forward with the cleaned up language. Obviously, we need to amend it so that the laws in the city and the state match up where they need to. I also agree with giving a little bit more time to the debate and understanding this. As a researcher, it's not, it is of course in my nature to want to know more before we act, and all of the concerns that the medical community has raised are valid concerns. However, they have nothing to do with what you're voting on today, specifically in that the registry is not under your purview. That being said, we know that our medical program has quite a few bumps and things that could be addressed to make it better. The state of Nevada is one of the only states currently where the price of medical marijuana or recreational marijuana is not cratering because of an over-allowance of licenses. So while yes, we do want as patients to be able to have an affordable product, we also do need to make sure that we can protect both our medical and recreational markets, because when we have seen other states that have allowed far too many licenses, the medical programs in states like Oregon and I believe Colorado, but definitely in Oregon, have had issues with just remaining intact. So I am in agreement that there is a need to at least continue to look into this before we make any major decisions.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, hold on, no, you're going to go last.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so, all right, anybody else for Mona Lisa? Okay, you get the last 30 seconds.
All right,
So wrap it up
I
real
just
quick.
want to make it very clear that we're here for the medical marijuana program. And as we heard from their own representative and owner himself, he told you all from the beginning they were banking on legalization. So I want you to understand that businesses, whether they tell you or not, they have their own agenda. And so patients would really like to see some type of regulation that even if it is a retail establishment for adult use, that maybe we have some regulation that they have to have a certain amount of product for medical patients, or there's a certain priority given to medical patients. We might look at some type of regulation that is more succinct so that we don't have to fight against our own people. So
Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay,
All
that's
right,
it.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to close public hearing. Thank you very much for all your comments. It was very helpful. Val, what section in the First Amendment deals with the medical marijuana being tied to retail? Where, so we can be very specific on where.
I believe it's in section 9 on page 17.
Well, can you just make sure? Section 9? All of section 9?
The section 9 on page 17 in your proposed First Amendment on line 18, There are 7 lines total under retail marijuana store. The last 3 lines, starting with notwithstanding, would fall out. That's the only sentence. That sentence says, notwithstanding anything in this chapter to the contrary, no application for a retail marijuana store may be accepted or approved unless the retail marijuana store will be operated in conjunction with an approved medical marijuana dispensary at the same location, and the license will be held by the same person or entity that holds the license for the medical marijuana dispensary. That sentence would come out if the proposal that Councilman Coffin had were to be delayed and brought forward separately. Everything else would remain.
And that's located where? Line what?
That's lines 21 through 24 on page 17.
Line 21 through 24, okay.
There might be another location in there, too. Why don't we phrase it in such a way that...
Well, there aren't any, because that's the only place we added it. That's the only place where it talks about the mandate.
Okay.
Everything else would be permissible.
Line 21 through 24, okay. All right, so any other comments from my colleagues up here? Yes, sir.
Thank you, colleague, sir. I want to make sure that we also, at this same time, if we move and successfully pass this semi-amended bill, that we have a request from the dais for a committee bill addressing the issues which are being excised from this one.
I'm very confident that you will introduce that ordinance.
So you don't want a committee bill?
No, just you're going to introduce another ordinance.
I'm trying to get you on this bill somehow.
You're going to get me on it when it's time to vote.
Okay.
So we'll go from there.
All right, I won't.
So do I have a motion then?
So just to be clear, we're making a motion to approve the first bill to make sure that our language matches up to the state's, and that's what we are voting on right now, correct?
So it would be the original bill with the First Amendment minus lines 21 through 24, correct?
Correct.
It would be the bill as introduced, adding in the changes that I described that staff wanted as additional cleanup, taking out the one sentence on page 17 that would limit retail marijuana to medical marijuana.
Okay. Is that your motion there, Councilwoman Fiore?
That would, repeat that last sentence, that would limit.
It would be the bill as introduced, adding in all the amendments that I read with the exception of page 17, lines 21 through 24, Councilman Coffin's request that no retail be allowed except at a medical marijuana facility. That sentence would drop out. Everything else in the original bill as amended would go forward as a First Amendment.
I understand. Okay, so all of the dates are good. Okay, and then Bob, you're going to reintroduce something.
I tell you what, I'll go ahead.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve that.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of the motion, please vote.
On the motion, just one more thing. There's some clarity needed. There have been several people that brought up the idea that somehow we don't have diversity in this business. 20% of our 12 medical licenses in this town are owned by either female or minority stockholders. 20% or 18%, I forget the math. So just so you know, if the reporter here makes a note of that, it's not entirely true. It's a pretty good percentage, actually.
Okay, the recommending committee passed Bill 2018-9. That will be heard at the May 16th, 2018. And stay tuned for Councilman Coffin's new bill. All right, so now we will move on to, let's see. Okay, item number 9, citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda. If anyone would like to speak, please come forward and state your name and state your comment. Hi.
Good afternoon. Once again, for the record, my name is Mona Lisa Samuelson, and I am your patient advocate and community activist. And I'd like to once again point out that I brought down a list of the medical marijuana patient issues. I don't want that to be overlooked. We have serious issue with our legislative protections. Your medical patients need you to understand what those issues are and help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else during citizen participation? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for coming down.